Hello, welcome back to another video. Today we're gonna be doing a Tau tier list, and it's gonna have all the all all the Tau units. This is a revised version of the last one. Because over time I've seen that I've gotten a few wrong. And it's got the Forge World units because I've put a bit of research into the Forge World units and what they do, and stuff like that. So first, I am going to build a basis of what's S tier and what's F tier. F tier is going to be stuff like the tactical drones, which they do have a decent amount of firepower, but they have 0 OC, and they're very expensive. They're about 70 points. It would probably be better just to maybe get a Cadre Fireblade and put it on one of your Breacher teams, because you will have a Breacher team. And then there's S tier, which is going to be stuff like a Breacher team and Cadre Fireblades, because Breacher teams have full reroll wounds on objectives, and they've just got decently really good shooting. And Cadre Fireblade just helps that shooting out a lot. +1 to the attack characteristics of everything really is pretty insane. So that's pretty good. Now let's do one in all the other tiers. So I think A tier was crisis suits, something that is probably needed in a list just because of how solid they are. They're not great. They're just about the same as they were last edition, which is pretty darn good. Now to the opposite, D tier are these guys, the Kroot Firestalkers. The Kroot Firestalkers, they have a bounty ability, but they don't really have the firepower to pull through with those bounties. Kroot, I see them as really just bodies blocking the way, and these guys are a bit too expensive for bodies, as they're 105 points. It's probably better just to get something like a fire team, and wreck shop with them instead of, well, not wreck shop, you're not wrecking shop with a fire team, and just have them do an overall decent job. Alright, next, for B and C tier. In B tier, we're gonna have something as a base, like Commander Shadowsun. Commander Shadowsun, she just does a iffy job, and that's what B tier is. Her job is to, like, she doesn't have a job that's that good. She needs to be within 6 inches for anybody to get her ability. Her shooting is kind of mediocre, especially for her price. So you want to put her in a place with a bunch of people, and her abilities help her move around and help her not get you. She's just pretty decent overall. Pretty decent, pretty mediocre. A little Vanguard doing its own thing unit. For C tier, as a base, we're going to use Anshi, just because how the Cadre Fireblade is so useful. Anshi is really just not as useful. The +1 OC won't be useful to the Breachers, because when you drop a Breacher out of the Devilfish, you really want to make sure that whatever they were shooting at is dead. And if Anshi can't help with that, if he can't help out, he's not going to do that well. And overall, he's just mediocre. You don't want a Tau unit in melee, and that's what Anshi does. So they're going to have a hard time with that. Darkstrider, A tier, with the ability to get the, I think, reroll ones to hit, or, oh yeah, lethal hits. Spotted units get lethal hits. With Pathfinder, with a leader unit that's spotting, Darkstrider is like the only person you want to put this on, even though it's another extra 20 points. Him helping out the Pathfinder team is nice, because the Pathfinder teams are really good, and getting that lethal hits to another 2 units will be really nice, just as like an extra little thing to make sure that the enemy units really die. Devilfish, A tier. Devilfish is really good. Its ability to advance and then drop off whatever it's got is pretty nice. Its shooting is meh, but that's because it's a transport. and all of the transports having the missiles, the seeker missiles, is really nice because they're really low points, are hard to kill unless you got something designated to kill it, and um, just overall pretty good. The Ethereal, giving its entire team a 4-up invuln, is pretty good. 4-up invulns will be nice if they've just got high AP, because you put, let's say somebody's got like an AP -1 bolter, and you're shooting at the Fire Warrior Breacher team. 5-ups isn't really that good, so the 4-up invuln for the entire team is really good. The command points, though, are kind of mediocre, so I'm going to move the Ethereal down to B tier, because for its price, you might as well just take Cadre Fireblade, and I don't think anybody's taking more than 3 squads of Breachers. Firesight Marksman, I think he's F tier. He has Infiltrators, which isn't really good for him, because if anybody looks at him, he's basically dead with his 4 wounds and 4-up save, I believe. Might be 3-up. His 3 shots are not the best. They only have 4-up to hit, and he's very expensive, 70 points. So there's not really much use for him. He's pretty bad. Ghost Skill, C tier. It's very expensive. The Fusion Blasters are really nice. The Infiltrator stealth is really nice. Lone Operative is nice. But, it's 170 points. If you want something with Lone Operative stealth Infiltrator, you should probably get Shadow Sun, because it's just slightly better. And its shooting output isn't the best, but it's also not, it's just not good. It's not the worst. It's just not good. Hammerhead, I still believe it's S tier, because it's going to be one of the main things you need to destroy tanks, because of its good strength 20, compared to everything else, which kind of maxes out at strength 9, except for the Seeker Missile and, on the broadside, the Heavy Rail Rifle. The Skyray Gunship is kind of bad. So Skyray Gunship is just more expensive Hammerhead with more dispersed shots, but it's less strength, less damage, and the Hammerhead really specializes in one-shot hitting all the time, whereas the Skyray Gunship has the Hammerhead's ability, and it really just doesn't work for it. Crew Carnivores, I think, are decent. They're Crew Carnivores. They're kind of cheap for lots of guys putting on the battlefield. Their weird thing where they eat people is interesting. Makes them, gives them a bit more survivability. Although I don't see it happening that much. It's not something you want. It's not something you're counting on for a game. But other than that, they're still pretty good for just a bunch of bullets. Kroot Hounds, I think they're C tier. They're pretty decent, but they do not have OC. Their melee is just kind of mediocre. It's just kind of making your opponent waste a turn on them, which is probably not what you want to be doing. That means you're pretty much in a ditch and you don't have a way to get out. So they're mediocre at best. They can tie up non-melee for probably a few turns, but other than that, they're not that good. Anva is pretty good A tier. Its ability to have 2-up invuln for a turn is really nice. It's also quite cheap at only 65 points. It doesn't really help anybody else out except for the +1 to leadership tests. But if you want something to sit on an objective and not die without a lot of guns going into it, basically giving you some guaranteed points, Anva is really good at that. Kroot Shaper, it helps out the Kroot, giving them that invulnerable. I'm not sure what the invulnerable's for, but it'll definitely be nice. And the 4-up invulnerable, if you kill them now, is pretty good. Krootox Rider, I think, is really good because Krootox Rider +1 to hit when you're other Kroot. So if you're running Kroot, you basically have to run the Krootox Rider. And it's also got its fun little, it can shoot marker lights, or it can use marker lights. So like the Krootox Rider and the Kroot can use marker lights, but since these guys don't have shooting, they've got no ability to shoot, so they cannot use marker lights. Long Strike, I think Long Strike is pretty bad when it comes to hammerheads and helping them out. It gives them lethal hits, which means you don't roll wounds, but with hammerheads you should basically always roll wounds because there's not really a downside of it. If you get a 1, you can basically just re-roll it, assuming you didn't get a 1 to hit. And not having lethal wounds means you don't get devastating wounds, or having lethal wounds on a hit means you don't get devastating wounds. Although if it is turn 3 onward, that means they get their lethal hit, but I don't think that really matters as much. I mean, that means they get their sustained hits, which means 2 more things they can roll for the for wounds. But I don't think that's the best. So Long Strike, he goes in, I guess, very back of B. Is just more expensive hammerhead that shoots probably a bit better, but it doesn't really matter for hammerheads. Pathfinders, I think, are top of A. Their ability to have either the 3 rail rifles or 3 photon blasters, I think, gives them really good ability to shoot more, put more on the output of shooting. So they're better at that. They're just overall really great at shooting, and their ability to spot and help out other people really probably synergizes with any list, so they're going to be doing really well. And with Dark Strider, able to giving them spotting as lethal hits will be really nice. Which kind of goes hand in hand with Ghost Skills. Not the Ghost Skill, no. Stealth Battle Suits. Stealth Battle Suits are also an A tier. They can only spot 1 person, but they do have a buff to spotting. I forgot what it was. It was pretty good, though. And having them being able to infiltrate, and having them... They're just very versatile with the ability to drop in people early with rapid ingress and things like that. They're just going to be pretty useful. Piranha. So Piranha used to be F tier and how bad it was. Now I think it's probably B tier, somewhere in there, because it's good, right? But it's still not the best. It's got really good shooting, but actually, let's put it in A. It's got really good shooting. It's got OC, but other than that, it's just kind of mediocre. Its special ability is lackluster in output, because if you get them to fail, that means they just get right back up again and take that objective when it matters in their turn, because you roll leadership tests again in your command phase, so it doesn't really matter. Although its shooting is quite good for its point cost, it's probably not going to be able to take out any large units unless you take it in like a squad of 2 or 3. Alright. Razor Shark Strike Fighter. C tier. And the reason I put it here is because it's quite expensive, 150 points, and it's got about 12 shots that it can put out. Although it is good at hitting those shots, and it'll probably wound, having 12 shots means it's not always going to take out that infantry unit it's shooting at. It's not always going to do that well. So that's kind of bad for it. And not being able to take out what it's supposed to take out in 1 turn, I don't know. I think it should be able to take out its target in one turn and then move on with it, especially for its price of 150 points. If you can't take out like a 75 points of Kroot carnivores, then what you doing, bud? Riptide, it's 235 points and it's got some pretty good shooting, but I don't think it's the best. I'll put it at back of A tier. Well, actually, no. I'll put it top of B tier. Because compared to, like, I think some of the Forge World units are pretty good. Its ability to have one turn where it does, I think, devastating wounds. It's kind of meh. It's not really that good for it compared to other things. You know, and 235 points for its shooting is probably a bit expensive because, I don't know, I just don't think he's the best. Storm Surge. Storm Surge recently got debuffed. Points went up. Storm Surge in the town are. So it's a bit more expensive now. It's about 465 points. And Storm Surge is pretty good, but the problem it has is usually you need a spotter, and so you got it spotting one thing, and with Storm Surge you'd hope it take down that one thing in that turn, unless it's like a knight. And then you have to move on to something else, and so those tiny cluster rockets and stuff like that, they're not gonna be going into the spotted unit probably. So that means they're going to have 5 up to hits or -1 ballistic skill. So he's not going to be shooting as well with all of his extra random stuff that he's shooting. Fire Warriors. I think Fire Warriors are also pretty good. I think they did a good job with all of the infantry. Infantry like the Fire Warriors. They're pretty good. It's just kind of average. 100 points, 10 guys. They get their drones and their ability to 4-ups on Overwatch, and Overwatch you use a lot more now. It's pretty good, but you're not going to be using the 4-ups to Overwatch that often because you can only take 10 guys, I'm pretty sure, and their shooting is not lackluster, but it's not going to be shooting anything big that comes at them. If a squad of Bloodletters is coming at them, it's not going to take them out. They're probably going to die. Razor Shark, no. Sun Shark Bomber, I think it's pretty good. Its ability's nice, dropping all those bombs on everybody. They basically get the grenade stratagem, but they can use it once per turn, and you don't have to pay the CP, which is nice. But again, for its 150 points, it's not really the best, although Mortal Wounds are nice. It was better last edition, and it's still pretty decent now, but just not the best. Vespid Stinglings are probably top of A tier, maybe S tier, because top of A tier, let's put them there. They're very cheap, 75 points for 5, and their guns are pretty good, but their movement's pretty good. Well, their movement's great. The only problem really is their survivability, but they'll be doing fine if you are good at playing them. So their guns with their strength 5, AP -1, damage 2 is just really nice if you want to put a lot of bullets into a Space Marine squad or something like that, especially for the only 75 points that they're costed. They're pretty good. Alright, before we move on to Forge World, let's get all the rest of these guys who are on the back for some reason. Farsight. Farsight is really good. It's he can +1 to wounds if you're within 9 inches of enemy models, and reroll wounds once per battle. So that means basically, as long as you get all the shots through, you can basically get all the wounds, and then they're down to their AP -1, AP -2, depending on what you're shooting with. You can basically just get all of your shots and wounds through once per battle. And that's really nice, assuming your opponent doesn't have good invulnerable save, good saves. That means you're probably going to be killing him a lot. And his fighting is decent. His shooting's kind of mediocre, but if you put him with a squad of 6 crisis suits, his ability will be really nice, and he'll work quite well. Broadside Battlesuit. I think Broadside Battlesuit is another S tier because you're going to need them to blow up some of the smaller tanks and things like that. Its strength 12 means it gets 3 ups to wound even on Leman Russes. It's really hard to kill, especially for smaller units that don't have a good AP, because of its 2 up save and it's 4 up against mortals, which is really nice. Now, these 3, the commanders, I think these 2 go here and this one goes here, because the commanders are kind of bad. Sure, they've got good shooting, but paying 175 for just minus 1 AP, or 125 for reroll 1s. He's decent, but when you can play Farsight, you really only need 1 Crisis squad. I guess if you're taking 2 squads of 3 or 2 squads of 6, if you're really crazy, you could take one of these guys. But other than that, I don't think the average player is going to be taking 9 to 18 Crisis suits. So I'd say probably steer clear of them, as their abilities are kind of mediocre, especially the Enforcer Battlesuit. I'm going to actually move him down to D tier. And the Cold Star, its ability to give everything Assault is just kind of sad, because I feel like they should all have Assault, considering the Crisis's ability is to advance 8 inches, but whatever. The Yavara Battlesuit. So I think the Yavara and Ranava, or I don't know, I'm saying it wrong. Avarna. I think they're both A tier, Avarna being in front of it because Avarna has better shooting. I think they're overall just better versions of the Storm Surge. Avarna basically has the Storm Surge's main weapon twice. Well, not really. It's got basically 2 Leman Russ battle cannons on its arms, which is really, really good. And its ability, which is basically harder to hit, or maybe +1 saves, +1 to invulnerable saves. I think it gets like a 3 up invulnerable save or something like that. Makes it really hard to hit, makes it really survivable, and it's got pretty good shooting. And then this one, its 10-shot flamer is really nice, especially with its strength 6, AP -1, damage 1, and its blaster cannon is like a Leman Russ cannon on its arm, which is also really nice. Although its ability to move 18 inches is not as good as the Avarna's ability to not get hit as much, I think it's still better than the Devastating Wounds, and I think its shooting output is still better than the Devastating Wounds. That's my personal opinion. Remora Stealth Drones, I think, or something like that. I think they're F tier. They're like 160 points for something that is lackluster in shooting, although the amount of Seeker missiles it has is really nice. It's just not as useful, especially with it being so many points. Its shooting is just lackluster. Its ability is cool, but with lackluster shooting, I don't think opponent is going to put that much into killing them, especially with their AP 0 as well. For 160 points, you could probably get a lot better stuff. You could basically get most of a Crisis squad for 160 points. It's just crazy that they're that expensive. Tetras, I'm gonna put them top of A, probably. Yeah, they're probably S tier. For 80 points. You can get full hit rerolls. They've got pretty good. They've got great movement, maneuverability. They've got decent survivability, and their shooting is pretty bad, but full rerolls to hit for against spotted units is great, especially if you're spotting something like crisis suits, which only get a 3-up, which means 1 or 2s you can just completely reroll them, which is nice. And especially for only 80 points, their ability is just great. Alright, Town R Supremacy Armor. A tier, you're probably not going to be taking it. Actually, no, I'll put it top of... Actually, A tier. It did get boosted to like something like 800 points now. So, it's very expensive. And it's nice, but it's going to have the same problem that the Storm Surge will have. Once it's done killing whatever it was shooting at, it's going to be hard to kill anything else afterwards. So that's going to be its problem. Although its Titan killing ability is really great, and it basically eliminates the need to take anything except for it when it comes to killing tanks and things like that. Barracuda, I'm going to be honest with you. I think all three of these, the Barracuda, the Tiger Shark, and the AX-01 Tiger Shark, are all great because their shooting is like absolutely wonderful to me. I don't know. 315 for just a really good gun, or 200 for the Barracuda's really good gun, and the Tiger Sharks being only like 295 and 315, their shooting is just amazing. Their ability for the regular Tiger Shark is kind of mediocre, because battle shock tests after the shooting phase don't really matter unless they fail it like twice in a row, but they shouldn't fail it twice in a row because they don't have to take it twice in a row. But the AX-01 Tiger Shark having an anti-Titan 3-up means that those two really big guns on the front are going to basically just destroy like anything they're shooting at, making them probably a better Titan hunter than the Town R Supremacy Armor, assuming that they can get their hits through, which I believe they can. He has 3-ups, and if you're taking anything that has good helping out to hit modifiers, like the Tetras, then they're going to be really good. And that's it for the tier list, guys. Thank you for watching. If you would like to do this tier list for yourself, Tier Maker, it's on there somewhere. If you have any problems with it, put in the comments below, because I would also like to learn what's good and what's bad and how to play it. So I'll see you guys in the next video. Thanks for watching through, and I guess, yeah, if you are finished watching this video, if you're here, then you should probably like and subscribe, because that means you're going to enjoy other content that I release. Thank you, and see you next time.